she starts talking to me, and then she says, so there's 2 heartbeats. And I'm just like, kind of like, what? I had to have her tell me a few times, like, it's twins, like everyone's healthy. And she did, and I was like laughing and shaking and just, I could not believe it. Hey guys, it's Joanna and welcome to Nesting Story. Today I wanted to share a story with you that is partly why Nesting Story began. So I will be sharing my twin birth story, but this is a 2-parter. I really needed to share my pregnancy story first for you to get the big picture. And I think when you're pregnant with twins, half of it is just wondering, especially in the beginning stages, what am I about to go through and what is my body about to go through? So I'm going to share my personal story with all of you. I know there's those amazing urban legend twin pregnancies out there. They do exist. There's some fabulous twin pregnancies out there. So I'm not saying all twin pregnancies are like this. This is completely my personal story. I should also mention that I have 4 kids. So I had been through 2 singleton pregnancies before, vaginal deliveries, with no complications. So I had been through it a couple times before with both a boy and a girl. So before I dive into the actual pregnancy, let's back up a couple years. So I'd had my 2 kids and I had always wanted 4 kids. I was one of 4 and that was just always my plan. So after having 2, I said to Mike, I don't know, I might be done. Like, I'm pretty good. We found an easy place. Our kids were getting a bit older. And Mike, who had always wanted 3, said, oh, just like take a break. Let's just take a break and see how you feel. So then I agreed. Let's just take a break. We were waiting until our kids were about 2 and 4. And then I started to get the baby bug again. I was like, yeah, I do want 1 more. So we started trying, and just like the previous years, right away I got pregnant that first month, which was really exciting. We told family, we told our kids, and then I had an early miscarriage about a few weeks in. It was pretty devastating. I had never gone through anything of miscarriage before, and they're very common, but at the same time we had to explain to our kids who we had told we were gonna have a baby that we weren't, and they wouldn't, I don't think they could grasp it, and they would forget sometimes and then talk about the baby, and we'd have to remind them that no, mommy's not pregnant anymore. So that was really tough. So we just decided, okay, we're just gonna keep trying. So as months went on, we kept trying and nothing and nothing. And this is like, we've never had this before. Our first and second got pregnant with quick. So I was going through a stressful work situation, and so I decided to leave that situation and change my work-life balance a bit, start working for myself. But I really think that that level of stress for me caused me to have secondary infertility. So that first miscarriage was about February, and then by September I had another really early miscarriage, like a chemical pregnancy that basically quick for about 1 day showed that I was pregnant on a pregnancy test, and then it went away because I kept taking them and I knew something was off. It just didn't seem like I was, and I wasn't. So that was another very early miscarriage. So by the fall, when we were closing in on trying for a year, I was really getting worried and starting to wonder if something was wrong or going on with my body. So we decided to set up a meeting with a fertility clinic. We went in for that first meeting, and they're very nice, and they said, you know, it probably is to do with the stress, but if you've had 2 kids, there's probably nothing wrong. It's too early in your cycle to test you, so go take a month, go relax, have fun. We'll see you in a month, and then we'll start doing tests to figure out what's going on. So that month I did. I really relaxed. I went on wine tours with friends. I drank lots of white wine. Like, I just really relaxed. I think it was knowing that I was taking that problem and putting it in someone else's hands that just totally relaxed me. And near the end of that month, I had the stomach flu. And as I thought I was getting better, I started to feel kind of worse again. And I remember specifically being at a Christmas party and having a glass of wine or 2 and just kind of feeling like my body didn't quite seem, I don't know, I could kind of start to get a feeling that I might be pregnant. So I was supposed to wait until I could go and get my blood tested with the fertility clinic, but I just had a feeling. So I went home, did a pregnancy test, and like, it was 2 dark lines. I was pregnant, and I really felt like this could be it this time. So that's stomach flu feeling didn't go away. That was my first hint that I was pregnant. I knew I was pregnant, so okay, I was having pregnancy nausea. And the thing is, it started to intensify like crazy. I had a bit of pregnancy nausea with my first 2 kids, but nothing like this. Like with my first 2 kids, if I smell a smell, it was so strong, it made me feel a little bit sick. Or if I was driving the car and someone was smoking in a car, maybe like 5 cars away from us, I could smell it. And there's just little things that make me feel like icky. But this was different. I was so nauseous, and it would escalate near the end of the day. By 4 p.m. I was just like on the couch, barely getting through, barely parenting. Like it was torture. Mike would get home from work around 5:30 or 6, and by then I was in bed. I just couldn't function, and by 9 p.m. every night I was being sick to my stomach before bed, and then the whole thing would start all over again. And that pregnancy nausea went on until 2nd trimester. And just a tip for any of you who might be pregnant with twins, don't be shocked if it pops up again in your last trimester. It really did for me around 33, 35 weeks. So it's not uncommon with a twin pregnancy to have that reoccurrence again. I think it's just running out of the room in your tummy that makes you nauseous near the end there. So I still didn't know I was pregnant with twins, but I was starting to think something was very different with this pregnancy. Everything was magnified, like just every single pregnancy symptom that I was experiencing was completely magnified at this point. When I was 5 weeks pregnant, after I already knew because I had done the test, I was sent in to do the blood work to see if I was pregnant. And they did it a couple times that week. And all my HCG levels were normal, and that's the hormone level they test to see how pregnant you are. And I had heard before, even though I was kind of thinking something was off, I have been told before that your levels would show they would be much higher if it was more than 1 baby. They were all normal. So that whole 5-week period where I was getting my blood tested a couple times, nothing, there's no red flags, nothing seemed different than anything normal. But still in my gut, even though I had never been one of those people where having twins crossed my mind. I have so many friends that would convince themselves every pregnancy they were pregnant with twins and they weren't. It never crossed my mind that it would be me. So I remember about week 6 calling my mom, crying, just saying, I always loved being pregnant. This is torture. I don't feel well. Something's wrong. Maybe it could be multiples, but then my HCG levels were normal. So it really messed with my head. Then week 7 came. That was when I was to go in for my ultrasound with the fertility clinic. So I go in, Mike was home with the kids that day and he offered to go, and I was like, no, we've done this a million times. We know the routine, just stay home. So he stayed home with Holden and Bo while I went and got this ultrasound. The ultrasound technician did an external and an internal ultrasound, but she was very tight-lipped. Like, she wouldn't say anything. And I eventually stopped her and said, is there a heartbeat? Like, is the baby alive? She's like, oh, yep. But she just could tell something was really funny. So finally she wrapped everything up and she said, get dressed and wait, and then you'll see the nurse after. And I was like, okay. So she leaves the room, I'm getting dressed, and I decide to peek at the screen. And on the screen were these 2 circles like this. Like, I described them like owl eyes. I started to think, that's not normal. I don't think that looks like there's 2 sacs. But then my logical side was like, no, don't get crazy. Like, it's probably a full bladder and then the sac. But it got me thinking. So I go into the waiting room. I have to sit there for another 5 or 10 minutes. I'm texting Mike and I'm like, this is what I saw. I don't know what's going on. And all he said was, laughed, and he said, well, let me know if I need to buy 2 car seats. Like, that's Mike's personality. I knew he'd be just thrilled to find out we were having twins, where I'm just like, is this real life right now? So the nurse calls me into her office and she starts talking to me, and then she says, so there's 2 heartbeats. And I'm just like, kind of like, what? But because it was a fertility clinic, she says, don't worry, it's only 2. It's only twins. And I was like, I had to have her tell me a few times, like, it's twins, like, everyone's healthy. And she did, and I was like laughing and shaking and just, I could not believe it. They could already see that there were 2 separate sacs. And so that was huge. I think they also could see that there's 2 separate placentas at that point. Now she said Yep, they're fraternal twins, and so that's good because that means they're very low risk. They're not high risk. They're not sharing the placenta. Their cords can't get tangled. So that's really, really good news. And that was the thing she seemed to need to stress to me the most, because I'm sure they see a lot of high risk pregnancies with the other kind. So we knew that. I had already been out of the house for a really long time, and it had been a really long time since I had sent those texts to Mike. And he was freaking out. He was sending me a million texts. He thought something was totally wrong with the baby, and little did he know. So I didn't even talk to him. I didn't even say, oh, I'm done or anything. I just drove home. I was around the corner from our house. So I get home and I walk in the door and the kids run over to me and he goes, is everything okay? I've been texting you. I couldn't even get a word out. I was laughing with tears running down my face, holding up 2 fingers, and he was like, no. And he thought I was joking. Like it took about 10 to 20 minutes for him to finally believe me. And I'm not the type of person to pull a prank. Like that's him. I don't do that. We decided then and there to tell our kids that mommy's pregnant with 2 babies, and they were very excited. So we kind of couldn't stop laughing for the next couple days. That's kind of how that first initial shock went. We told a few select people initially, but we were getting very close to Christmas, and so we made the decision to just wait a week or so to tell some family at Christmas. So we did our Christmas Eve, and we had Holden go up to Mike's mom and say, there's 2 babies in mommy's tummy. So that was really, really exciting, and it was very fun to tell people. Got mixed comments, mostly great stuff, but some of them like, I'm so sorry, you know, like just some bizarre stuff. So I got used to that type of thing, but everyone was like, you're gonna have your hands full, and it was really exciting to tell everybody. One of the first things I started to do after the shock kind of subsided, or even while I was still in shock, and I was trying to manage this nausea at the very beginning, was start Googling pictures of twin moms' pregnancy bellies. I had no idea how 2 babies were gonna fit in my stomach. With my son, I was very upfront, and with our daughter, Bo, she was breached until the very end. She flipped last minute, but I was very small with her. So I just couldn't figure out what I was gonna look like. And I could see these pictures online that some of their tummies look like a big torpedo. Like, how was I gonna carry this? In the end, I carried both high and low. It was very egg-shaped. So by around 15 weeks, my nausea subsided. I felt a little better, and it was perfect timing because I was going away to Las Vegas with Mike. No kids. We were able to get away for a few days and have some fun. So we get there and we check into our hotel, the Bellagio. It looked very pregnant by then. I think it was about 18 weeks, and already I looked like I was approaching my 3rd trimester. So we check into our hotel, and if you've ever been in the Bellagio at Las Vegas, this was my first time, you know it's huge, and it takes about 5 minutes, 10 minutes to get to your room in some areas. So our room was very far away from the front lobby. So we started walking to our room, and all of a sudden it felt like someone had put a vice on my tummy, and I couldn't breathe, and I had to find a chair and sit down. And after sitting for a couple minutes, it went away, and I was like, what was that? And then it finally dawned on me that could it be Braxton Hicks contractions? So Braxton Hicks contractions are these kind of practice contractions. They're not real ones, and they can start fairly early on in your pregnancy. Usually with singletons, it's later on. I had never really felt them with the older 2, but little did I know, I hadn't done much research by then, that with twin pregnancies, it's very normal around 18 weeks for that to start. And sure enough, it started, but it wasn't like a stop and start thing. It was like it just took hold, and until I sat down long enough and usually drank some water, it wouldn't go away. So in Vegas, it's a walking town, so that was interesting. Basically, we had to pick and choose. We were gonna go and stop and start wherever we were going, take cabs, a lot of places. And the Braxton Hicks contractions is something that just intensified throughout my whole pregnancy, and eventually I would actually have to get into the bath and drink a lot of water for it to calm down. So that was interesting, and just the start of what was to come. But just before we went on that little trip, we got to find out what we were having. I thought I was gonna have to wait till my 18-week ultrasound to find out if we were having a boy or a girl, or 1 boy and 1 girl. We both, for some reason, had convinced ourselves that it was 2 boys. We even had names picked out. We go in for my 16-week ultrasound, which, because I was having ultrasounds quite often because it's a multiples pregnancy, the ultrasound technician right then and there said that they could see what we were having if we wanted to know at 16 weeks. So that was really surprising. We didn't think we were gonna find out that day. So the first one has a little look, it's a girl. The second one has a look, it's a girl. We were having 2 girls. So just so you know, we have a boy and 3 girls now. Once I got past my 20-week point was when one of the most common twin pregnancy or multiples pregnancy symptoms set in. Painful hips. Oh my gosh, the pain in your hips when you have twins is excruciating, and I think it's just everything shifting for things to move and the weight on it. To this day I still have hip pain. I think I've permanently done something to my hips because of having twins, but I was just trying to survive. It was so bad, and I would try to walk around and it was just so painful. So I ended up getting a support belt, and I didn't even care. I wore it over my clothes, and that really helped for quite a while, until later in my 2nd trimester, approaching my 3rd trimester. My heartburn with all of my pregnancies was always so bad, but this was intense, and I had to stop wearing the support belt because it was kind of lifting my belly, and it was making the heartburn worse, so I had to give up on the support belt. So I ended up opting to go from couch to bath to couch to bath just to ease that pain, and always have a pillow in between my thighs when I was laying on the couch. It was pretty bad, and that's something that stuck with me until the end of the pregnancy. My belly would take different shapes throughout the whole pregnancy. When I was later in my pregnancy, it really took an egg shape, and baby A, which ended up being Mia, was down low, and baby B, Everly, was up high. But here's the thing, Mia had nice comfortable real estate right here, where Everly, she was pushing Everly up, and Everly was just stretched right here, and there was literally a bulge coming out of the side where Everly was. Poor thing. Everly ended up coming out with a squished head, and we know why, because Mia just shoved her up there. I should probably mention that during my twin pregnancy, I had some very dark times. In fact, I was really fighting depression through a lot of it. I started as a parenting blogger, and I've blogged about my journey, and I've often got some flack for being truthful about this. Just people saying, you know, you should just be thankful that you can have a baby. There's a lot of people that can't have a baby. I get that. I'm not saying that there's not different struggles, but I think this is something that a lot of people don't talk about enough. And it was from the crippling nausea during my 1st trimester, then to the isolation from not being able to move into the 2nd trimester, and then straight through. I really struggled sometimes, and I would call my mom, and she was great, and I would literally have her walk me through while I sobbed on the phone how far I've gotten, how many weeks do I have to go, how much I've already done. It was hands down, I've been through a lot of hard stuff in my life, and hands down, my twin pregnancy was the hardest thing I had to do. It was very mentally draining on me. I also had these 2 young kids. My husband was at work trying to take care of, and I relied a lot on help from our family. I would parent from the couch. I would lay on the couch with a pillow between my legs, put on a show, make a little bed for each of the kids, and have a little snack bowl for them, and I would just do the best I could. But there were some very dark days, but I think it's very important to be honest about that, because I'm sure I know I'm not the only one, because I've talked to a lot of other moms who've had a very difficult pregnancy, and it can be very, very mentally taxing. And that is why I started Nesting Story, was to be able to connect with those moms, to let you know that you're normal, that I went through it too, and it's okay. It made me stronger than ever. But I think I do need to address this here in this story, that there were some very dark times during that twin pregnancy. I was able to get through those dark times by pampering myself, going for pedicures. It was very hard during the winter here in Canada, but then once the warmer weather came, it was a bit easier. I could get outside a bit and just get the sun on me. But I just made sure I took care of myself a lot, watched a lot of TV series, and just put in the time. Like my OB would always tell me, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you just have to keep looking for the markers along the way. Get past certain weeks and you know, okay, this has developed, the lungs are better, this has happened. So it's a mental game very much. By the time I hit 30 weeks, my heart was really struggling. Even though every time I would go for these ultrasounds and tests, which were by this point a couple of times a week, our twins were thriving, they were growing, there was no problem, but my body was really struggling. Every time I would go up a flight of stairs, I would almost black out. I would have to lay down and wait until I could function again. I have very low blood pressure naturally, and then so whenever I was pregnant, my blood pressure would drop even more. So this was very taxing for me. And by 33 weeks, I ended up going for some tests and having to wear a heart halter to see if there's anything more going on. And sure enough, it would show that my heart would go through runs, which basically would mean it would start racing every once in a while just to kind of keep up with the blood flow and everything like that. And that was very hard. Even though I wasn't told I had to be on bed rest because my twins were struggling, I was on bed rest because my body was struggling. When I was in the bath, I would sit on the floor. I don't know why I didn't get a bench, but I would sit on the floor and I'd have to shower myself sitting on the ground. I would spend all my time on the couch. I could barely be on my feet. Between almost blacking out, the Braxton Hicks contractions, and the hip pain. It was so brutal. And I couldn't cook meals. I had people delivering meals to us at that time. I was just an incubator. I just kept saying that. You're an incubator, you're a vessel, you're just growing these babies. It was very hard for me to give up all control of our house and parenting our kids. By this point, obviously there was a lot of moving, and I could see a head bulging here and a foot bulging there. I'm watching. But by 35 weeks, you could actually poke and it would hit back. Like, it was really cool to see this. And usually now, knowing the position, it was Everly that we know we were poking with, and she would poke back. So it was just so amazing to watch just this belly go all over the place and bounce around. When I was 35 weeks, I had something really scary happen. By this point, it was the summer and we were almost there. Although my doctor was totally rooting for me to have a vaginal delivery because all they needed was baby A to be head down, and it didn't matter. I had had 2 great deliveries before. Mia, baby A, had decided to plug the exit with her bum. And despite hoping and praying and hoping that someone would turn, it was very obvious that I had to have a C-section to deliver our babies. So if I wasn't going to go into labor naturally, I would have my C-section at 37 weeks. By this point, our kids were home from school for the summer, and we decided to hire a part-time nanny just to help me with the older kids, and she would be with them. So one day we were driving to my parents' house. I was driving our van, our nanny was in the passenger seat, our kids were in the back. We were driving along the country road between our house and my parents' house. And suddenly, as we're all chatting away, I could feel my vision just go like a tunnel. Like it was just coming in from the sides. It was terrifying. It went all the way down to a little pinhole, and I pulled over, stopped the car, was able to regroup and get my vision back, and I switched places, thank goodness, with the nanny, and she drove the rest of the way. When I got to my parents' house, they were very concerned about this episode and were worried about my blood pressure. I was like, oh, it's always low, it's fine, it's fine. My mom used to be a nurse, my dad used to be a doctor, so they were not so convinced. They took out their blood pressure machine, and it was up a bit, up more than usual. I called Mike, we talked about it, and we said, you know, I'm so close to the big day that let's just leave it. I think I'm fine, it went away, and let's just leave it, which is stupid of us. We should have gone in. It was a sign of preeclampsia. That was slowly starting to develop. Everything was scheduled for my C-section at 37 weeks, 4 days. So during my last week of pregnancy, I went out for dinner with some friends, and we went to a restaurant where they mostly have booths, and I couldn't fit behind any of the booths. And they were so kind. They kept moving me around until finally they found a table that would fit all of us and could put me in a booth that I could fit. And they even brought over free dessert because I think they felt really badly. I thought it was pretty funny, but I was a spectacle by that point. The day before my scheduled C-section, I had to go in for my pre-op appointment. I ended up having friends drive me everywhere while Mike was working. ever since that scary driving episode. And I had a friend drive me to this appointment, and she and I were chatting away as the nurse was doing all of her tests on my body. And then suddenly she noticed that my blood pressure was very high, and she stopped everything, and I told her about the episode I had, and she was so concerned. She had me move right to labor and delivery, and I ended up being in the hospital the day before my C-section for about 12 hours with them all debating if they should deliver these babies now. So they said if my C-section wasn't scheduled first thing in the morning the next day, they would be taking those babies. So I did eventually get to go home, have a sleep. We were able to stick with our whole babysitter scenario and everything we had worked out, and went in the next morning for my C-section. I'm gonna end this video here because there will be a part 2 next week. It's gonna be all about my twin birth story. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the video, and if you like this video, hit that like button. And if you have subscribed already, thank you so much. It means so much to us. If you'd like to read more about twins or my journey with pregnancy or how I tandem breastfed them and all those things, I'll leave the link below to my blog, and you can head over to that twin section and read all of those articles that I've written about it. I put out videos 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday and Friday are vlogs, and Wednesday is always something different. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.